But welcome everybody. Be sure to hit the like button. Be sure to hit the subscribe button.
I remember in middle school when you felt self-conscious if you were the last one to go through puberty. That really went topsy-turvy, didn't it?
Sometimes the Hasbara, it's too much explaining yourself and it's too apologetic.
Be sure to hit the notifications bell.
I actually do believe Israel won't just bomb countless civilians.
Be sure to tweet this out. Be sure to put this up on your Facebook.
You have to be kind to people. Being kind is the guys in this mess in the first place.
Put this up on your Reddit.
Chile is a country.
Be sure to cut and paste, a link to this to go into your favorite Facebook chat group.
It's good to see so many normal people in here.
Now, spanking isn't just my deep, dark personal secret. It's America's deep, dark secret.
I've never seen it explained so simply anywhere.
Put this on WhatsApp. Put this on Telegram. Put this on your favorite messenger app.
Hello and welcome to the Untitled Anarchist Seagull channel. I'm your host, an Untitled Anarchist Seagull called Elise, and I hope everybody's doing well out there, or as well as possible in this wonderful end-stage capitalist hellscape we got going on. I have been on a bit of a bullshit harvest, and I've got a number of things to look at today. Let's see. One thing that really kind of stuck with me after last night was this whole thing. This is something that Caleb Muppet has done more than once, where he's completely misrepresented the nature of MK Ultra and said that it was like handing out drugs to university students. And as I mentioned, I mean, first of all, that's just not what MK Ultra was. That's a total trivialization of what MK Ultra was doing. It was the CIA's attempt at a mind control program that just ruined a lot of people's lives, completely fucked them up in all sorts of ways. But also, it's pretty clear that Muppet must know that he's seriously misrepresenting MK Ultra, because there are a few things we know about Muppet. One is he's got sort of a special interest in fucked up things that the CIA has done. Another thing is, and we know this from people who left CPI Mark 1, and that really genuinely was a mistake. I was not going for that. CPI Mark 1, and talked about it. We know that he's very interested in cult mind control and psychological manipulation techniques. That is a thing he's into. And we know, because right on the stream, we've seen him quoting at some length from Naomi Klein's The Shock Doctrine. And here's the thing. The section he quoted from was about the absolute disaster of Russia in the 1990s under the so-called neoliberal shock therapy regimen that was imposed on them largely by Wall Street and the US. And the thing is, you can't read that far without having seen the part in the book where she goes into some detail about MK Ultra. So what's just been sticking with me is that he's actually lying about MK Ultra. He clearly knows better. Lying about MK Ultra in a way that makes the CIA look less awful than it is, and I just find that really interesting. Just sort of nagged at me a bit, because he definitely knows better than to say that it was just handing out drugs to universities, stuff like that. And yet, more than once, that is his entire gloss, including in one of his glorified unedited Twitter threads that he publishes in book form. He has repeatedly said that that's all fucking MK Ultra was. I just find it interesting that he lied about it. Okay. So, I've harvested a bunch of crap. Caleb Muppet crap. There is a very short bit of New York Post crap. There's Xander Holt not understanding anything about the ICJ's advisory opinion on the occupation of Palestine. Hey, Riveroon, how you doing? Oh, and incidentally, if you haven't seen it, John the Duncan's got a video out about co-ops and market socialism that I just started watching before this, and it was looking really good. Another one of his excellent, like, theoretical deep dives that he does so well. With a Glasgow accent, which just makes it that much better. Definitely worth checking out. Okay, there's some Pim Tool stuff. Democrat VP nominee slammed over support for socialism. Dems want to lose. I think we gotta go with this. This'll be our little starter. Mop in Ultra. Come on, you can load.
From SCNR, Harris VP picked Tim Walz, excoriated
over socialist and far left positions. God, I want to live in the fucking world that these motherfuckers like to paint. This wonderful, amazing world building they do, where just bog standard liberals are extreme socialists. Like, I mean, every single time they do this, called fucking Barack Obama a communist. Then they tried to do that with Joe Biden, which is hilarious because he's a Republican. I mean, not even like a moderate Republican like most Democrats. He's a hardliner. His closest associates in his interminable senatorial career were the fuckers like Jesse Helms and Trent Lott and fucking Strom Thurmond. They always do this shit. So here we go. This is Tim Pool, who always reminds me of a line from that movie Knives Out, which Toriel Dreamer, who occasionally shows up in the stream, is always nice to see, recommended to me some like a year or so ago, probably by now. Where it goes, what were the overheard words by the Nazi child masturbating in the bathroom? And somehow that always brings Pim Tool to mind. Ah, boy, no, it's imperialism bad.
From SCNR, Harris VP picked him.
What the hell is SCNR, incidentally? I've never heard of S. What is that? About. What is this? Subverse Incorporated. That was community owned. It claims to be community owned. Inverted World Live. Okay, Subverse Incorporated. What the hell is Subverse Incorporated? Oh, okay. This it is closely associated. The chief editorial officer at Subverse Incorporated, according to, let me see there, SC. Yeah, this is Tim Pool's own fucking website. He's the CEO and co-founder. Here, let me just drop this in chat. So SCNR is literally just Tim Pool's own website that he's using, and now he's like laundering it like he's reading some third-party stuff. This is his shit.
Tim Walz excoriated over socialist and far left positions. Criticisms of his past.
I can't wait to hear what his social. We heard that apparently, well, according to the New York Post, communism is when menstruation.
policies have resurfaced after Harris announced the Minnesota governor would be her running mate. Okay, look, he's the George Floyd riots governor. He's an admitted socialist.
That's an interesting way of putting it. Yes, he was governor at the time of the 2020 uprising against white supremacist police terror, and his role in that was to sic the National Guard on the people who were rising up against police terror. And in a really disgraceful moment that some of you will remember, one of the local union hall was handed over to the National Guard by some bootlicker in one of the local trade unions. It turned out without authority, and then he just got completely really pissy when union members showed up and started protesting what he'd done, and finally they had to be kicked out. Okay, he's an admitted socialist, we're being told. Oh, I'm not bad. I've been sleepy all day for some reason. That's why I'm having a nice cup of tea.
Reach out, make the case. And for one thing, don't ever shy away from our progressive values. One person's socialism is another person's neighborliness.
Like, that's their evidence that he's an admitted socialist. That's their evidence that he's an admitted socialist. He doesn't, like, do they know what words mean? Admitted socialist would mean that he says, I am a socialist. He did not say that. He very specifically was saying, not that some people might call things that's, progressives, whatever the fuck that actually means, like socialism, and others would call them being a good neighbor. Like,
He's an admitted socialist.
well, no, he literally isn't, though. You saw the video too, didn't you, Pim?
And let's see.
But it's neighborliness.
It's neighborly.
He's far left on abortion.
Well, far left of what exactly? Supporting abortion rights is the majority position in the U.S. It is, I mean, if centrism means anything, it would have to be connected to, it would have to be connected to public opinion in a particular place or the world in general. And public opinion in the U.S. is way in favor of abortion rights.
He's far left on what he wants 16-year-olds to vote.
Who cares? Like, okay, he wants 16-year-olds to vote. That's what you're going to stake this on? That he wants 16-year-olds to vote? Like, fucking Scotland does?
I kind of feel like they chose him because they want to lose.
I think
they want to lose. Yeah, well, I mean, see, the fact that they chose... If they wanted to lose... I mean, there is a good argument that they want to lose, although choosing Waltz isn't the proof of it. Choosing Waltz is that they're ambivalent, is proof that they're ambivalent about losing. Choosing Harris was something that also suggested more sort of ambivalent about losing. Because, again, Harris is just a right-winger, and Waltz is pretty fucking milquetoast. I mean, he is, like, sort of very, not, you couldn't even call him social democrat, like, fucking Sanders. But they live in this weird world where the polls say the opposite of what the polls say, so they assume that the, like, maybe 10% of the population that actually agrees with their right-wing shit, that they're the majority.
I hope you're right. I think they chose him because they want white politicians to act like him. I think they want them to go from being somewhat moderate to being extremely progressive.
They want white politicians to act like him? Is that what she just said?
Want to lose.
I think they I think they chose him because they want white politicians to act like him.
That's what she said. What the fuck? Like, they want so they don't want black politicians to act like him? I mean, leave aside the bit where he's supposedly extreme because he did something that the overwhelming majority of the population wants, like in the U.S. as a whole, but also in his fucking state.
I think they want them to go from being somewhat moderate to being extremely progressive. They think progressive is the only way forward for America because they want the destruction.
Because they want the destruction. You see, the ironic thing is, if you look at the polls, if they gave a shit about the polls, if they wanted to ensure that Republicans never took Congress, basically that Republicans were shut out of federal politics altogether, what they would do is, in fact, move way to the left on a lot of things, because most people are way to the left of them on a lot of things. They don't do that because their donors don't want it. Like, literally, what she's sitting here saying, actually, that they see as the future is literally what their polling people are almost certainly telling them, and what they're just simply dismissing because their donors and their voters want very different things.
Well, Kamala is going to be the fall girl, right? Joe Biden was on his way down and out. And so something happened behind closed doors. We don't know the truth of what has taken place thus far. No one's speaking about it. No one's talking about it.
Lots of people have been talking about it. I mean, it's like been the only thing that a lot of people could talk about. What do you mean nobody's been talking about it? This is like when fucking Muppet yesterday was talking about how this secret national TV interview that he dug up where Kamala Harris was talking about how once in university she smoked weed and listened to albums by a rapper who had not actually made any albums when she was in university.
We couldn't even find President Biden, but it seems as if he was getting ready to be smashed, Biden, and it's like playing football, and you pitch the ball to someone else to make sure that you don't get hit so that someone else gets sacked.
Well, yeah, except the whole point was they would be less likely to get hit if it wasn't such a, like, this combination of genocidal ghoulishness and obvious decrepitude.
And I think that Kamala Harris is soon to be sacked, and they selected Tim Walz to push her agenda as well, but they're both going down.
Also, GGM, eins kann ich sagen, das stimmt. Die Hausmann ist völlig, also die hat ja ganz enge Verbindungen zum venezolanischen Rechtsextremismus. Ihr Vater ist ein venezolanischer Rechter. Also man erkennt das ja eigentlich sogar an den Nachnamen. Denn solche Nachnamen findet man eigentlich nur unter den reichen Weißen einer sehr kleinen, sehr weit rechtsaußen Minderheit der venezolanischen Gesellschaft. Ja, die Hausmann ist tatsächlich, ja, also die unterhält tatsächlich Verbindungen zu dem.
And I do believe that in 2028, you'll see the resurrection of the Obamas and Michelle Obama. They wanted a clean slate this time because they don't think that they can compete with President Trump. So they're
Well, no, they don't really seem all that keen on competing. They, like, actually, if anything, the fact that they picked fucking Waltz over Shapiro suggests that maybe they do feel that it would be good if Trump did not win. That is one of the first really clear indications that there's any desire to actually win the election, because, like, all the negatives around Shapiro, I mean, the Israel stuff, the fact that he's an extremist, white supremacist Zionist with, you know, who actually was in the fucking IDF is just one side of it. I mean, there was an extremely fucked up case when he was Attorney General where a woman was stabbed 20 times, and he ruled it a suicide, and the prime suspect, I mean, well, he didn't personally rule it. Yeah, nobody's heard of Guaido. Guaido had sort of disappeared because he was just such a fucking embarrassment. I mean, it's funny how they completely scrapped that. They didn't even try to stand Guaido. The right-wingers in Venezuela did not even try to stand Guaido, because he was never popular. Nobody had heard of him until he declared himself president. And after that, he did nothing but steal Venezuelan overseas assets and use them for his own benefit. With the assistance of the U.S., who anointed him fake president. Yeah, they put Guaido back in the broom closet.
Therefore, they just pitched the ball to someone else to lose.
So, do you think that Michelle Obama wants to run for president?
Please no.
I think that she does.
Really?
Yeah.
I've always thought she didn't because she sort of she hasn't tried to get elected on the state level or anywhere else. That's what Hillary Clinton did.
Well, it's not.
I mean, there's really, it does not seem to me that she does because she has not been putting herself out there that much. Like, I mean, people who want to build a federal political profile do tend, even if they're not like standing for office, they make sure they're front and center anytime anything important happens, that they get in front of a microphone, and that has not really been what Michelle Obama has done. She's kind of gone off into the background.
Necessary for her to have to do so. You know, her husband was a professional campaign manager, pretty much. You know, he was an activist. He mobilized people in a local community.
Yeah, an activist. Yeah, for like a year and a half in university.
There are many people, for some reason or other, who love her and they like her. And I watched the response of the.
Ja, also das, also der redet größtenteils Scheiße, aber ab und zu sagt er einfach etwas, was ja einfach wahr ist. Und die Verbindungen der Hausmann zur venezolanischen Ultrarechten sind ja sehr, sehr gut bekannt, sehr dokumentiert.
The Obamas, when Kamala Harris was tapped, there was utter silence. The last person to cash in their vote and support towards Kamala was the Obamas.
Hey, that doesn't sound like silence, actually. That sounds like support. And let's remember, the Obamas were, like, instrumental, by all accounts, in managing to convince the party leadership that they really needed to, that they needed to replace Biden, because the party leadership were insisting on Biden. Like, they had so many opportunities. They could have binned him a long time ago if they cared about, like, public opinion. They cared about his approval rating. They cared that, you know, people did not actually think that he was in any fit state to be have control over the U.S. WMD arsenal and everything. But no, they waited until it was so bad that even the media started admitting that, yeah, he was it was a bit of a disaster. So they were silent because they voted in favor of Harris after playing a major role in building the consensus to take Biden out of the race. That's a very interesting approach to silence.
Right. Well, there were rumors that Obama went to Biden and said Kamala Harris is going to 25th Amendment you if you don't get out of the way and endorse her. And that part.
Now, what is true about that? There was some interesting leaks that Harris had expressed. Oh shit! Sorry, I just lost my mouse. That Harris had expressed a willingness to use the 25th Amendment, declare Biden unfit, and that Schumer and Pelosi had signed off on that. But not in the context of if he doesn't step down.
If the deal, I don't know if this is true. This is just a rumor.
This is the great thing about, like, the Tim Pool cast. You don't have to know if it's true to just say it.
And that part of the deal was that the Obamas would not endorse Kamala right away. They wanted to make it look more legit.
I had heard reporting, I don't know what 25th Amendment thing, but I had heard
yeah.
reporting that Obama was expected, because the media noticed immediately that the Obamas hadn't signed up. The Clintons had fallen in line, everyone was all excited.
Soros.
And Obama's hadn't, and I had...
Yeah, somebody had to say Soros. Because, you know, Tim Pool is so concerned about the anti-Semitism. At least when it has to do with people like not liking genocide, because he likes genocide. Tim Pool, who was the platform that fucking Nick Fuentes and Ye used when they were doing their full-on Nazi anti-Semitic shit, and that where Tim Pool was nodding along and Moonlord was nodding along, and afterwards they said, I think those guys are doing Jews a favor by saying all this. Yeah, that motherfucker, and who like always brings up Soros in this sort of anti-Semitic conspiracy theory context. Yeah, that motherfucker wants to claim that he cares about anti-Semitism.
Seen this reports go out. Oh well, they're just waiting for Joe Biden to have his moment and Kamala, and they're going to wait a couple weeks, and by the next day they had endorsed her. So it does make me think there are some kind of calling in of favors happening behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Wow. Welcome to the conversation. Yes, of course that is what happened. Because they could have done this. They could have done this like last year, if they were just going by the polls. They clearly, you had a situation where the party leadership were dead set on having Biden run, despite all of the evidence accumulating that nobody wanted him, and then something had to be done to build a new consensus. And that's
something sinister is going on. There's a plot. We don't quite understand it all.
Yes, we fucking understand it. It's not actually a very hard to understand plot. They looked at the polls. They looked at the fact that Biden shot the bed in that fucking debate. It just clearly was kind of disoriented. They looked at the fact that he was polling worse than the most unpopular president since polling began. And they said, maybe we shouldn't let Trump win so easily. Maybe we should actually, we have plenty of other right-wing goals we can have. We don't need to stick with this one. Maybe give them a substitute for what they want. Like, you don't need a fucking sinister plot to explain why they did this, unless you just want to pretend that everybody loved Biden, which is hilarious to hear them doing, because that hasn't been how they've been presenting Biden. That isn't something they've been saying about Biden, but it is interesting how they're they're having this kind of a freak out over the fact that Biden is no longer running, which makes sense because it suits Trump's supporters for Biden to be running.
I believe that things will come to a head soon. I believe that Kamala Harris will lose, and then she'll begin to leak and say what's really going on and talk about it and share it. She might write a book or a memoir.
Oh, she might love that.
She almost certainly will. She's a politician. They all do that. I mean, this is such... I mean, it's like... It's one thing to do the sort of, there's something going on behind the scenes thing and actually point to something that indicates that there's more than meets the eye. It's another thing to just look at a very obvious, very easily explained, and more or less upfront situation that is easily explainable and makes perfect sense on just really elementary assumptions and go, there must be some kind of plot here. And if Kamala Harris is the beneficiary of such a plot, though, why the hell would she be the one to blow the whistle on the plot that she's a beneficiary of?
I think Tim Walz gives Tim's a bad name.
I think you're right.
People are saying tampon Tim, turncoat Tim, and I'm like, hey, whoa.
Don't bring me into this.
Tim's not a bad name. Don't blame Tim.
Blame Tim for what? Caring about making sure menstrual products are available to everybody who needs them? Okay.
Blame Tim Walz.
That's right.
Say wacky Waltz. How about that one?
There's also reports out that in Minnesota, because the abortion laws are so extreme, like you were talking about, that they're
extreme. They are literally just the way the law was in the entire country until the Dobbs decision came down. They are the way the laws would be in the entire country if the opinion of the majority of the population held any weight at all in this country.
There were 8 babies born as part of abortions and then left to die. that they were born alive.
Yeah, I hear that. That happened
In 2021 during failed abortions, and none of them were provided any care to save their lives. They were just left to die.
Okay, so she's just making shit up at this point.
Wow.
I don't
people making shit up. I know it's a shock.
Doubt it. And that, for the life of me, I don't understand why someone like Kamala Harris, knowing that blacks, we're not even meeting replacement numbers. It takes 2.1% of births for a population to replace themselves.
And isn't it like 34% of abortions in the U.S. are performed on black mothers?
It's true. It's even higher.
Well, I mean, assuming that's true, it sounds like maybe black women are in really bad economic shape and often find themselves in situations where they can't actually afford to have a kid and don't have access to affordable and effective contraception. Assuming that's true. I'm going to look that up because there's no reason, there's no reason to assume anything any of these people says is true. Okay. Okay, Kaiser Family Foundation. Okay, it's actually higher than that, at least according to the Kaiser Family Foundation, whose research on these things tends to be fairly reliable. They put the number, let's see, for 2021, which seems to be the most recent year they've got figures for, at 42%. But again, you're talking about one of the poorest demographics in the country. It should not surprise anyone that the demographic in the country that has, their net worth is often in the fucking single-digit dollars. Like, they are easily one of the brokest demographics, so one of the most completely screwed over demographics in the country, that they would be the ones who would be more likely to get pregnant. And this is the percentage of abortions, by the way. It's not the percentage of, so this is the percentage of people who have had abortions. And the total does not add up to 100% for some reason. I guess because they don't have data for everybody. But, so, let's see. Total number. Just to put this into perspective, since they don't. Total number of abortions, according to this, is 394,000. And of that, 163,863 women and pregnant people who had abortions in 2021 were black. But again, economically, that makes perfect sense.
Higher than that at times. Blacks make up 13% of the overall population in the U.S. Black men account for 5%. Black women account for 8%. Of the ovulating black women,
Ooh, we're gonna talk about the ovulating. We're gonna talk about the eggs.
They account for nearly 2 to 3% of the overall female population.
Is Tim Pool okay with this? Because we've established that when ovulation is communism. You're not supposed to acknowledge that menstruation happens because that's communism. And here he's talking about ovulation, which is part of that process.
But they account for nearly 38 to sometimes 40% of the overall abortions.
That's crazy.
So there's a such thing called black genocide. That's a term taken from Reverend Jesse Jackson.
No, it isn't. It's actually a term that originated with far-right white supremacist Christian fundamentalists in order to try to get more right-leaning black people into the anti-choice movement. That is where that started out. But I mean, you're gonna talk about why it might be that so many that, you know, you're going to talk about the financial situation of black women in this country? You going to talk about any of that, or are you just going to talk about the eggs?
But Jesse Jackson, when it came time for him to run and be a Democrat president, he sold his community down the river, and he would no longer call it black genocide. And so, according to Reverend Clenara Childress, by 2038, the black population rate will be at the level of Native Americans.
Well, and do you think that maybe if that's okay, if that's your issue, like just population, do you think that maybe you're in the wrong place if you're having this conversation with a bunch of people who are actually kind of cool with the idea of there not being any black people, who actually are kind of annoyed that they have to acknowledge that there are black people? And, okay, according to census figures, both the raw number of African Americans in the U.S. and the percentage of the population, have overall been increasing. That change between, the raw numbers continued to increase from 1990 to 2020. The percentage had been increasing steadily from like 12.1% in 1990, 12.3 in 2010, 12.6 in 2000, 12.6 in 2007, and then it dropped 0.2 of a point between 2010 and 2020, at the same time as the population itself grew by about 2 million. So this idea that the population is in decline is just nonsense.
Oh, that's horrifying.
And so
it's not growing rapidly, but it is certainly maintaining.
What we're witnessing right now is the self-destruction of a community while the National Black Congress supports it, while the NAACP supports it, and while many of your black activists say nothing about it.
But why is it the self-destruction? Because again, you kind of have to wonder why it is, whether it might be a coincidence that one of the most economically fucked over demographics in the country also happens to be quite, to have a fairly high rate. Actually, let me see. So, let me switch back to percents on this. This is the KFF numbers again. Yeah. It has the highest rate of abortion of any demographic, any ethnicity in these KFF figures for 2021. I mean, you could say that those things are kind of possibly related.
And so in the black community right now, people are looking at Kamala and saying, we don't identify with you. Because at the end...
Well, not because of this. It's because she's a cop, because she's always been very much on the side of the cop. She's been very much on the side of locking up large numbers of black men, often for just bullshit, like, minor drug beefs. She has, like, any time that there's been an opportunity to be for or against mass incarceration, to take a side on that, she's been on team mass incarceration, and her motivations, her stated reasons for doing it, have been ghoulish. Like, at one point, there was a plan to release like people with nonviolent convictions in California who'd served at least half of their sentence to reduce overcrowding. These California prisons, like U.S. prisons in general, are fucking chock-a-block. And she opposed this, specifically saying that this would deprive the state of California of a valuable source of slave labor. Like, so I don't really think, dude, that this is why people in the black community have a problem with Kamala Harris.
At the end of the day, you've offered us nothing. She's been relatively mute over the past 3.5 years. She's done nothing. And Barack Obama?
Well, yeah, she's a vice president. doing fuck all is kind of the job.
Did nothing to better the black community. When she was asked what she was going to do for the black community, she couldn't name a thing. When it came time to talk about the asylum seekers and the newcomers,
yeah, she said that she's very much that again, when she was talking about that, she said that fucking Trump isn't Nazi enough, and that like people who want like real Nazi policy on refugees, who really want to see refugees get hurt and die, should vote for her, just like Biden was doing. There's been no departure from that, and Waltz, incidentally, has also endorsed the neo-Nazi wet dream of a Biden border bill.
And the dreamers and the criminal illegal aliens, she could give you a litany of things that she would do.
Yes, mostly involving screwing them over, screwing them over and deporting them from the country or locking them up.
People see what's going on, and the support that she thinks she has, she's not going to have amongst many minorities this time around.
Let's also add to the story Tim Waltz establishing his snitch line for COVID mandate violators.
Wait, so, okay, first of all, once again, wonderful source. This is another fascist propaganda website. This is the Post-Millennial. This is Anthony his fake-ass website. And, yeah, so what you're saying is that Waltz actually, at least for a time, took public health seriously in the first months of the pandemic? Like, at least took pretending to care about it seriously. I don't know how well Minnesota did compared to the rest of the country. I mean, nobody did very well, but...
This is from the Post-Millennial. Post-Millennial.
There you go.
Millennial.
Post-millennial.
Post-Millennial. I'll make that website. That was basically it. He set up a snitch line for people violating COVID rules.
Mm-hmm.
This is the perfect example of what they represent.
No, unfortunately, it isn't, though. If only it were what they represent. Because COVID is fucking us up now, and there's nothing being done about it. And the CDC has been making it harder and harder to actually figure out how many people are even dying of it. They're not really reporting it. They have been going back, sometimes retroactively, and recalculating excess fatalities in order to include COVID fatalities increasingly in the baseline, so you can't work it out that way. I mean, if only they stood for the idea of actually taking public health seriously and doing something about it. Like, look at the fucking super spreader that this Olympics has been.
They long
That's
for
going to be
China.
a disaster. They're going to be statistically speaking, there are going to be a bunch of people there for whom this was their last competition, not because this was they planned to retire after this, but because they ended up getting fucking long COVID and now they're in no fit state to do it. Like, that is the situation. I mean, and you had fuckers going and competing while actively infectious and lying about it, and so necessarily infecting other people. I mean, it's a fucking disaster. If only the Democrats stood for the idea of being serious about getting this fucking pandemic to become a thing of the past.
Chinese communist-style governance. This is why they choose someone like Tim Waltz. And I have to wonder if the reality is maybe the reason Kamala Harris has become the default nominee, because the deep state actually has finally lost control.
The deep state has... Oh, wow. That's the explanation, Tim. That's the deep state has lost control. The deep state... now the deep states thing, you see? This is a whole new bit of lore. I didn't know this lore until now either. You're not the only ones who's hearing this from the first time. Apparently, the deep state was there to make sure Kamala Harris did not become president. I did not know this. This is a whole new fork in the shit hub of right-wing conspiracy bullshit.
I'm not saying I know for sure. I'm just saying maybe.
Oh, wow. Well, it's nice. That's big of you to offer that caveat.
So they picked Tim Waltz, not because it makes sense, But
but it does make sense is the thing. It makes more sense anyway than going with Shapiro.
Because whatever was left of the liberal economic order trying to maintain some control has lost, and now you literally just have the far left having come in and taken over.
The far left have come in and taken over, but the candidates are still fucking Harris and Waltz. This one, I'd love for him to define what the far left is. Like, we actually heard Dennis Prager. I found this fascinating, actually, that he decided to make this distinction between liberals and leftists, because usually right-wing ghouls like him, they make their meals. They dine out on completely collapsing that distinction and pretending center-right and even hardline right-wing Democrats are some kind of far leftists based on literally nothing.
So now it's Chinese communist-style governance. Bring in the guy who's going to lock people down and snitch on your neighbors. Give no policy.
Well, so what, you're against snitching now, Tim, are you? That's interesting. I don't remember you being anti-snitching when there were the campus protests against the genocide. I seem to remember you being on Team Grass then.
Positions appointed by party, and that's all they have to offer.
That's literally all that's been. That's just normal. Like, you're gonna pretend that the Republicans don't appoint, practice political patronage? That is so well established that, there are, if you take, like, a constitutional law course, there's a whole section on political patronage. Because there's been, like, litigation on that going back over a century. And what the courts have said is that there's an established sort of democratic tradition of at least certain roles being, reserved for people in the governing party, that is just sort of a normal thing, and it's just accepted, and everybody does it, because everybody does it.
I think it also makes sense that because Kamala was the more progressive wing of the Biden ticket.
Ooh, that's such an, wow, that is such an interesting qualification there. The more progressive wing of the Biden ticket. So more progressive than Joe Biden. That isn't hard. There are Republicans who meet that description.
That if that's where they're starting now, they're going to look farther left, right? This is the drift they are hoping for, farther and farther down.
No, they're clearly not hoping for it. If they were hoping for it, they would be encouraging it. This isn't encouraging it. This is what salespeople call a trial close, where it's like, people are saying, well, we really could use healthcare and wages that pay the rent, and maybe the rent shouldn't be so ridiculously high, and maybe you could do something about food prices and shit. And the Democrats say, well, how about this? I'll give you this guy who, he did do some good stuff about school lunches, although it was, although actually the real credit in that goes to Philando Castile's mother. She was the driving force behind that. But Waltz did sign the thing. And that's like his shining progressive moment, really.
Their worldview. In fact, I think there's probably no one objective in the room who can.
Yeah, I mean, on Israel, they are very clearly identical. In fact, the things that she said that some liberals, like fucking the Young Turfs, have tried to pounce on is proof that she is taking a new stance on this, that she's gonna get tough with Israel. All she's done is reiterate the Biden administration's official stance for months now. Like, ever since the Biden administration realized that outright rejecting a ceasefire on, in the abstract, just rejecting it out of hand, was a toxic waste position that was pissing everybody off whose support they need, they have done this thing where they pretend to be for a ceasefire. And so they pretend to be concerned about there are too many innocent civilians dying, which is so interesting because it implies that there is a right number of innocent civilians that should be getting killed. And this is just too many. Hey, Phoenix, good to see you.
Can say, hey, maybe this is not the guy. Maybe we should actually appeal to moderates. Like,
he is appealing to moderates is the thing. Waltz is very much the moderates guy.
They can only see him through the lens of identity. They see him as a white guy who's from a more rural state. So, of course, obviously, all farmers in America are suddenly going to fall in love with this guy. And I just don't.
Yeah, because that's who the Democrats need, really, is the farmers. That's their core demographic right there, is the farmers.
I don't think that's true. I think that they are lost by their own framework. It's distorting their perception of this.
I'm glad you're feeling up to joining in.
I think
Sorry
that's
to hear
right.
you were crying.
I honestly think they should have picked Andy Bashir in Kentucky because, again,
which is interesting because every single thing they're saying about Waltz could go double for Bashir in Kentucky. Like, Bashir actually, I mean, I have to say, he, like, on these, like, anti-trans bills that are criminalizing the existence of trans people, including in Kentucky, he actually took the hard line and vetoed it, and they had to override the veto, which is way more than a lot of Democrats have done. You know, he actually, and like Waltz, he's actually quite popular as a result of this. I really don't have this setup completely fixed. I keep dropping the fucking mouse.
would be a similar argument that they're making, that he's from a southern state that's all red.
Minnesota is not a southern state. It was southern relative to what? Fucking Manitoba?
That potentially could have some kind of, like, emergence of blue influence, that it's closer to this, like, Appalachian.
Also, das glaube ich überhaupt nicht. Es sei denn, sie hat eine Heidenangst vor den Folgen einer Weiterführung des Völkermords. Aber ich bezweifle das. Es müsste so richtig losgehen hier, damit US-Politiker auf die Idee kommen könnten, ja, also keinen Völkermord in Gaza mehr zu begehen.
Demographic that Vance is trying to pull, but also he's an active Christian, he has young children.
He fucks couches, he's a nonce, he was involved in, like, fucking CSA related scandals. He's an absolute creepy fuck, and he has all the life in him of a character in Mr. Burcham.
And instead, I think they are just looking for everything through the lens of, like, older white male who won't make Kamala look too old, and who has drifted more progressive, which they hope will make it seem okay that that's the way they want to take the country.
You know, I have to wonder if it's an impossible future to predict.
But he's gonna try.
But it is worrying. Maybe the reality is most people don't actually fall for this. It's just the system is rigged.
They say that. Like,
wait, what do you mean the system is rigged? Is the system also rigged when your guy wins? I mean, this is like the right-wingers in Venezuela who will participate in the elections anytime they're fairly certain they're going to win, boycott it all the rest of the time, and even if they make an obviously credible showing and do quite well, and they will just claim without evidence that this means it was absolutely rigged. It is rigged or not, depending on whether fascists win. I mean, and this is what he's doing here, because he obviously doesn't think the system is rigged when Trump wins.
Like I said before, they say that vice president choice doesn't win you.
No, that's nothing for you to be sorry for. It is a horrible situation on so many different levels, and I am sure you're not the only one in crisis at the moment. I wish there was more I could, do to make that better. I mean, for myself as well. Because I on the whole, I could be doing better, although all this shit weighs down on me as well. All sorts of shit does. But, Nothing for you to be sorry about.
The election, but it can lose you the election. Like, it's not necessarily the thing that makes or breaks a ticket. For me, it just gives an insight into the kind of administration or kind of campaign that is forming around Harris, which is pushing the envelope as hard as it can and
Pushing the envelope as hard as it can. Right. So the idea is that the envelope, the breaking point of the envelope is somewhere around every kid in school should be able to eat. Apparently.
basically looking for people to comply always.
And it's just vibe. It's like a whole feels and vibes campaign.
Well,
they're all feels and vibes campaigns. Do you think that the fucking Trump campaign isn't a feels and vibes campaign? They're just going for different feels and vibes because they're going for a different audience. Their audience is like ghouls, shitheads. And so their thing is like shithead power. You know, they're the act up for shitheads. And, you know, the people that Harris has to win over tend to be relatively decent sorts of people who don't want to, like, throw queer people into the wood chipper and shit. Don't want, you know, aren't explicit white supremacists. And so they have to do different vibes. Yeah, they're all fucking vibes campaigns. Where the fuck are you that you didn't notice this?
No policy.
Like, and what is she's giving? Like, is she supposed to be Blossom?
There's no policies. There's only identity and smiling and laughing.
Like, is this an epiphany? Noam Chomsky was writing about this back 20 years ago. He did whole things about this. He's written, like, extensively on exactly this, and she's just noticing it?
And hating Donald Trump and, yeah, and vibe. There's a lot of vibe.
Thanks for checking out
this. Because if they talk about the issues, it quickly becomes clear that they all agree with each other on the issues, and they disagree with most of us.
This clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.
Okay, so we've got a bunch of other Tim Pool bullshit. There's this Xander Hole thing on the ICJ decision, which I have a feeling is going to be a hot mess, especially because he's been very pro-Israel. We've got some Weed Lord. We've got let's see. I think we've got some Darman bullshit in here. We've got all sorts. What's everybody think? Yeah, I'm glad to see you here as well. Okay, this is Xander Hole, and I have to say this title is a masterpiece. The ICJ and World Court demand Israel stop their occupation of Gaza. Like, chat, can you count all the things that are wrong about this? Yeah, I don't think that doesn't sound like one that would really be a good fit, because the videos I like to do of Caleb Muppet are very specifically the ones that really expose that he's a fash grifter and also that he's just ridiculous. And this sounds like him pointing out fairly basic and well-known shit. Like, Juana Hausmann's relationship with the Venezuelan far right is extremely well documented, going back literally years. He is very late to that particular. He's very late to that particular party. Anyone who's paying attention already knew very well, because like her father is connected. He is one of their like the Venezuelan right wingers' economic advisors. So I think I'm going to go with something else.
All right, everybody.
Because that just sounds like it's going to be me mostly nodding and saying yeah, actually he's not wrong about this, and that doesn't seem like it would be. That does not. I mean, he might take it off on some fucked up tangent, but if it's one where I'm just saying yeah, he's not wrong about this, then I mean that kind of gets boring. I think for me as well as for anyone watching, because there's only so much you can do if somebody's just not giving you anything to. Oh well, would it be too late, Phoenix? Post your stuff in the Discord. I can put a little bit towards that, certainly, I think.
So, you know how whenever we... How do I start this? Actually, here's a better question. Have any of you ever debated a hardcore Zionist?
I mean, you've sounded like a hardcore Zionist for the past few months, Xanderhole. Like, he's literally been just, he's just been one pro-Israel talking point after another in his efforts to stand Joe Biden. Now he's gonna pivot and pretend that he is an anti-Zionist?
Argued with a couple, not on stream, but, you know, just sort of in real life and in, like, off-stream settings. And every time I've seen a debate with a hardcore Zionist, or even been part of one, I've noticed...
he was the hardcore Zionist in the debate, I would imagine.
Noticed a running trend. Notably that...
Oh, chat, can anyone tell me how many different things are wrong about the title about this video? Because it's just impressive. There are 3 totally wrong things in this video, in the title of the video alone.
It always tends to get locked in the weeds of some pedantic, semantic, unimportant definitional debate. Do you know what I mean? Usually it'll be over it'll go something like this. An advocate for Gaza will correctly state that Israel is committing a genocide, or is...
Whoa, this is like the first time he is allowed as how that is a correct statement. He has opposed that. He banned somebody for pointing it out in his chat on a video that we watched. Now he's just casually saying, yeah, obviously they're committing genocide? Like, then if it was so obvious to you, then why have you been pushing back against that for months, Xanderhole? Like, every single thing I've seen that he's done on Palestine in the past several months has all been finding some way to make excuses for Israel.
An apartheid state. The Zionists will say, where are you getting that from? How can you say that? It's a response to a military action by Hamas. How can you say that? How can you say it's an apartheid state?
Yeah, I mean, this is, in fact, what they do. They will try to sort of pick off little bits on the side and avoid ever seriously engaging. They just sort of stick to fucking talking points.
Point to any reputable institutions that claim this.
Yeah, and that's easy. That is actually easy because, like, literally most, like a huge number anyway, of leading experts on the subject of, like, Holocaust studies and the study of the genocide in international law and international humanitarian law have publicly come out and said, yeah, this is genocide. The UN Special Rapporteur on Human Rights in the occupied territories, Francesca Albanese, has said this is very clearly genocide and has issued a report explaining that finding. Every reputable human rights organization internationally and Israeli human rights organizations have said it's an apartheid state. Like, even, I think, Human Rights Watch, which has a total revolving door policy with the U.S. State Department and tends, if anything, to give Israel a big pass, felt pressured to acknowledge that, yeah, obviously it is an apartheid state within the international legal definition.
Right? And you typically get lost in the weeds arguing over what is genocide.
Yeah, if you don't, I mean, you don't need to get lost in the weeds, though. I mean, is what he's working up to that there was just never any source that, any, like, authoritative source that you could cite on this? Because that's not true.
What is apartheid? What is colonialism? You could go down the list, right? What is a war crime, right?
Yeah, and literally those are very easy. Those are basic legal terms. The Rome Statute defines the crime of apartheid. War crime is defined in the Geneva Conventions. It is what is called a grave. It is what is called a grave breach of any of the Geneva Conventions. That is a specified. Those are specified provisions in those conventions that specifically it specifically states any breach of those provisions constitutes a grave breach. You can also look at the Rome Statute there because it also covers war crimes and crimes against humanity. Like, all of this stuff, there are authoritative sources, you know, internationally accepted mainstream legal sources that you can use. And the Zionist talking point position is simply to pretend that doesn't exist.
Which is why for a while now, I've encouraged people to avoid that line of argumentation.
Which is why, I mean, you should just encourage people to avoid arguing with Zionists. Because there's no point. A lot of them are paid trolls that you encounter online. Like, if it's somebody that you have some sort of personal relationship with, where, I mean, it's like arguing with fascists, because, I mean, Zionism and fascism, there's a lot of overlap there, to say the very least. If, you know, there's a relationship there that you can rely on to possibly get somebody to listen to you where they're not listening to other people, that's one thing. But if you're, like, arguing with Zionists on the internet, on Twitter or whatever, you should not do that in hopes of changing their minds. A lot of them are paid to say the things that they say, and it's just talking points that you will see repeated over and over and over again. The only reason to engage in that is to show other people who are watching and maybe don't understand what the refutation is. That's like the only reason that has any value.
And not even bother trying to ascribe labels to what Israel has done.
That is a ridiculous thing to say. It is very obviously a genocide. Yeah, Zionists are going to argue against it. Like, I mean, but why should that stop you? Like, yeah, why should that stop you? Why do you concede that ground? Like, that is such a pathetic, like, cowardly position to take. Yeah, I mean, remember, this motherfucker thinks it's genocide when there is decolonization. His whole thing, he, like, accused Professor Flowers of being into genocide because she's in favor of decolonization. But he, you know, lots of people pushed back against that, and they were right to push back against that because that was bullshit. But here, when Israel is committing an actual genocide, when they are very explicitly saying, like, I mean, that's the thing. This is what's so ridiculous about this. Like, okay, very early on, right after this began, Craig McIver, who was like the head of the New York office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, resigned in protest and pointed out that this is actually an unusually easily provable genocide precisely because you have statements, public, open, unabashed statements of genocidal intent. Like, which is usually the thing that's missing. Usually what's hard to prove is that this intent is there. But you have, like, top Israeli officials just openly saying, let's starve them all to death, let's kill them all. Just explicitly saying this shit. And then you combine that with what they're doing, and yeah, obviously it's genocide. So that is such a cowardly thing to be saying, especially in an active fucking genocide.
I've argued that it's far better to simply explain bit by bit the acts that Israel has committed.
That actually gets you right into where you don't want to go. Because if you start talking about individual acts, every single one of them, if you're talking to a professional Hasbaroid, a professional Zionist propagandist, of which there are tons on the internet, and their job is to waste your time and just make you feel shitty for actually caring about Palestinians, they will have justifications for every single one, and they will get you bogged down in the weeds about, Al-Shifa Hospital and Al-Ahli Hospital and the Flower Massacre, and you will be debunking all sorts of very specific lies about very specific crimes. Like, I mean, this is terrible, but this guy is a professional debate bro. This is just nonsense. This is a terrible
the crimes
idea.
that Israel has committed, ones that are undeniable, fully backed up. Hell, there
is no such thing as undeniable. Like, I mean, this is so nonsense. This is such nonsense, because even the most undeniable things, you will hear Zionist propagandists denying them. They do not give a shit about how much evidence there is. They just lie. They will lie the whole day long because they don't give a shit whether people believe it. They want to create confusion. They want to make it look like a situation that is just so fraught and complicated that people shouldn't wade in and bother having an opinion or something. That is their whole thing. So what he's talking about is just driving people into exactly the sort of place that Hasbara trolls would want them to be in, where they get bogged down in details rather than just talking about the overall genocidal campaign. So, like, if he were not so remarkably ignorant, I would say that this was on purpose. But he is remarkably ignorant, and he is remarkably ignorant about Palestine specifically, so I think he is just that bad at this, in this particular case.
And insurmountable evidence of these crimes' existence, so just force them to engage with, like, the terror of what Israel, or I should say the IDF, has done.
No, you shouldn't just say the IDF, because the Israeli Jewish population, according to polls, think they're not going far enough. Like, there are polls showing that the overwhelming majority, they were asked, do you think that the Israeli military is using not enough firepower? Or, like, should they be using less firepower? Are they using just the right amount of firepower? Or should they use more firepower in Gaza? And, like, over 80% of Israeli Jews said they should be using more firepower. I mean, this genocide is being enthusiastically supported by the majority of the population.
To the Palestinian people. That is until about a week ago.
You see, this is how little he is bothered.
When things started to change.
He thinks that the fucking ICJ's advisory opinion was the first.
You see, the world of international politics doesn't exactly move at lightning speed, which is why, despite it having been almost a year now since the extreme ramp up in hostilities between Hamas and Israel,
the extreme ramp up, he's already abandoned the word genocide, ramp up in hostilities between Hamas and Israel. First of all, it's not just Hamas. The entire Palestinian resistance is backing this. Every single faction is in on it. They are working together. And in fact, I mean, there's a great, very interesting account on Twitter called Palestine Tunes. And I highly recommend it. It's like Palestinian rebel music, essentially. It's Palestinian resistance music. And one of the things that I find very interesting is that it is very non-sectarian. Like, there are lots of songs that are very specifically in support of one faction or another. You know, the PFLP or the DFLP or, you know, Qassams or whatever. But there are quite a few songs as well where each major resistance faction will get a verse in praise of them. Like, all of them together, where they'll say, where they'll do each one, you know, they'll say one, like, particularly, you know, famous, well-known characteristic of each of the factions and, you know, sing in praise of them and stuff like that. So you have, which is interesting, but so he's actually going to say that first of all, he's late to the fucking party on this ICJ opinion. Because that was weeks before he put this out. But he seems to think that's the first time that there's been an authoritative statement like this. That's not true.
Which has led to countless civilian deaths and the encroachment further of the IDF in Israel onto Palestinian land.
And don't say fucking countless. By the time he did this, the Lancet had already come up with their study that said it was, the conservative estimate was 186,000. Wow, that is a very Zoolander expression I've freeze-framed him into. Enjoy that. Enjoy that. But, I mean, don't say countless. It is because countless, people used countless with the earlier Gaza massacres, where we were talking about, you know, I mean, which all of them were absolutely horrifying. But we were talking about what felt like huge numbers at the time and really were. Like, you know, but talking about low thousands. And this time, you've got 2 million people at very, very short-term risk of just dying of starvation, disease, or just being, you know, blown up. Like, shut the fuck up, countless people. Use the numbers.
Some things turn around. The international community is beginning to react, and in a way that's really, I think, taken the wind out of Zionist sails.
Wow. He's like you ever play hide and seek with a 3-year-old? You know, and the 3-year-old will like sort of stand in the corner where they can't see you, and they assume that means that you can't see them. He thinks that because this advisory opinion is the first authoritative document on this subject, that means that's the first one that he caught wind of, that makes it the first one that there's ever been. Like, what about the fucking ICJ's decision in the South African case? You know, their interim order, their various interim orders. What about, you know, the special rapporteur's findings and all these international law experts?
Hear me out here. The World Court 10 days ago ruled that Israel's presence in Palestinian territories is simply illegal. And this is not the first story that we're going over here. This is actually kind of a 3-part story. We're going to be talking about the ICJ, the World Court, then the ICJ, and
he doesn't know that the ICJ and the World Court are just 2 names for the same fucking thing. The World Court is just a colloquial name for the ICJ, you fucking nong.
And the Olympics, because that's sort of the most current part of this story.
This is how little, like, there are so many people. I mean, myself, I am one of them. Like, quite apart from the level of trauma that anyone who's living through this, you know, in Gaza, or has family there, or in the rest of Palestine, and there's like so many people who have not looked away from this for a minute and have actually made sure to be completely aware and try to raise awareness amongst others of just exactly how horrible what's going on is, and have like really probably done ourselves injuries. Like, I mean, just last night, you know, Facebook now just pushes these posts that from pages you don't like, just in hopes that you will interact with them. And one of them was this picture, and it was like this rectangular, like, trench sort of thing. And my eyes weren't focused on it, and there was something white or off-white that was filling it. And I, like, started to tear up because my first thought was fucking more fucking mass graves. And then I looked at the page and I looked at the text, and it was a how-to on trench composting. Like, but this motherfucker has allowed this stuff to just whiz past him. He can't give an approximate number of the people killed. He actually, you know, he has been following this so spottily that he doesn't realize that there have been very detailed interim rulings from the ICJ, aka the World Court, specifically on the question of genocide in Palestine, and that they've issued very specific orders that Israel and the US have flagrantly violated well before this advisory opinion came in. This advisory opinion doesn't even deal with the issue of genocide. It just deals with the issue of the occupation. We went over it when it first came out. Like, he has clearly just not bothered to follow any of this, and he just noticed this. He's so fucking pathetic.
Being talked about is Israel at the Olympics, which is of course coming up soon. But for now, let's see what the World Court's ruling on Israel was like. Let's watch.
In favor, President Salam, Judges Tamka, Abraham, Yusuf, Shway, Bandari, Iwasawa, Nolte, Chargers, Brand, Gomez Robledo, Cleveland, Oresco, Tladi. Against, Vice President Sebutinde. By 11 votes to 4, is of the opinion that the State of Israel's continued presence in the occupied territory is unlawful.
Damn, 11-4.
Like, he's surprised by this because he does not realize, I mean, this is not actually as much of a shock as it should be. Like, because there was already a decision and another advisory opinion that this one builds on, which was the advisory opinion on the wall from 20 years ago. This guy, he will give people advice on what arguments to make, bad advice again. He has clearly not followed this at all. Because this isn't the first time that, I mean, this is the first time they've been this blunt in outright saying that Israel's presence in East Jerusalem, the West Bank, and the Gaza Strip is unlawful, and that the Gaza Strip has been occupied the whole time, and that therefore Israel is subject to the requirements of the Fourth Geneva Convention in respect to the population of Gaza and stuff like that. But they you know, this is the first time they've been this explicit on it, but they have said much the same thing, less explicitly, previously. Like, he just does not, I mean, this is such an afterthought for him. He just so clearly does not give a shit.
Determining that the occupation of Palestinian land by Israel is unlawful. Oh, oh. If I misheard you, but the Olympics are, they're happening right now, yeah. So I don't follow the Olympics super closely. I don't know when they start.
He doesn't follow this super closely either.
Or when they end. I just know that, like, it's current news, so I guess it's currently happening. Good timing on my part if we get that segment about it out, you know? It'll probably be pretty relevant if the Olympics are currently happening.
Favor, President Salam, Judges Yusuf, Shwe, Bandari, Iwasawa,
Like, all
Nolte.
this is the list of judges who were in. He hasn't actually shown what, you know, the oral summary of the ruling. But I'm noticing the time, and it is time to start wrapping up for this week. Thank you to everyone who joined in. I hope you feel better. Phoenix, it sounds like just a really shitty time, as it is for so many people, really. Thank you to everyone who joined in. I hope you enjoyed the stream. I hope to hear from you in the Discord. Suggestions, ideas, just kind of anything, really. And we'll be back at 11:30 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time next Friday. I will leave you with an Arabic chant I learned recently when I was looking for Palestinian rap from Gaza to listen to as part of my efforts to learn Arabic to get better at it. Yamin, Shimal, Hushum, Ihtilal. Yamin, Shimal, Hushum, Ihtilal, which means right, left, fuck the occupation. And then Shimal, Yamin, Hushum, Israel, which means left, right, fuck Israel. Just thought this might be, you know, in case you're looking to spice up your chance at protests and things like that, and have one that will be familiar to comrades in Gaza. There you go. Have a good night, good luck, and fuck Xander Hall.